Hello everyone, my name's Oliver East and today I'm here to review Metro X from GameWright. This is a flip and write game where you're flipping these cards over, filling in points on your board and trying to fill out these sorts of metro, subway, underground style routes. I'll teach you how to play the game and then we'll come back to give you my thoughts. So at the start of the game, everyone is going to take one of these boards, which are double-sided. The rulebook suggests starting on Metro City. The deck is going to get shuffled. Everyone takes a pen and one of these cards, which are double-sided. So it's got the penalties for reminding you not to try and leave empty stations, and also all of the different ways, all of the different cards that can come out of the deck. So on a turn, the players are going to turn over a card and they're going to utilise it. There are multiple different types of cards, but this standard one would see you writing a number into any of these windows and then crossing off so many stations. So for instance, I could take the 5, put it on this red one here and cross off 5 stations. Now there are some limitations. For instance, if I'd already gone along that route, and let's turn the next card over a 3. If I was to use orange, for instance, I would be starting along here and actually carrying this journey on along here. Now, let's say this 5 had come out now in the round, and I wanted to write it in pink. Now, I could do that. However, I would have to stop when I hit an X, which is here. You wouldn't normally circle it, but just for the example. So I would be losing the last movements of this, but I've still got a chunk along the pink track, so you might think it's worthwhile. Now, if I was to undo that a little bit and say that was a 2, but that X was still there. If this transfer card came out, this is a different style, and in fact you, instead of writing an X on the tracks, you write an X onto the car window, and then on the next station along that, so on this red one, which would be a really bad one, I'd work out how many lines were in it and times it by 2. If I'd have instead done it here on this orange, 2 different tracks would come in here and I would have written a 4 there. Probably better for more points. The third type of card is a skip. Now this is going to be very handy for later on in the game or throughout the game when you have these gaps. So if I use my 3 skip here, I would be allowed to put an X in here, skip over a filled station and carry on going. And you can see as this board fills up, as the lines sort of wiggle across each other, these skips are going to be very helpful. The final type of card that's going to come out of the deck is the free, allowing you to simply put an X anywhere without crossing off a window. Now I might want to come along here and try and get that pink that bit closer to finishing. Now there is a special standard blue card, this reshuffle, and when it comes out the deck you're going to be using the 6, which is the only 6 and the highest number in the game, but potentially I might do it on pink and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now hopefully later in the game I can get that free again, and that would allow me to finish that pink line. If you're the first person to finish a line, you score the most points. So if I just zoom in slightly, the 7 here is how much you'd win, and you just circle that if you did it first. If someone else has already done it, it doesn't matter how many other people, you would be getting the 5 points. So when this card comes out of the deck, it's very simple. You pick up all of the used cards, all of the ones left, give it a shuffle, and then carry on with the next card, which could actually be the reshuffle again. The game is going to be played out until everyone has filled all of their windows here by sort of crossing them off or putting the numbers in via the different transfers or the different route sizes. At the end of the game, you're going to work out how many points you get via completed routes. So for instance, at the moment I'd only get a 5, but obviously you'd get a lot more than that normally. You would then add your transfers, I've kind of used them here, so that would be a 2 and a 4 for 6 points. You'd work out how many empty stations you had. So let's look at the table and say that actually in this case I had got, let's focus that, let's say I had got 13, slightly unlucky to have that many unused empty stations, so that would be -6. So I'd say I'd got 13, which constitutes -6 points. And in this case you'd add that up and I'd have a whopping total of 5. Now you can see you'd normally complete a lot more of these routes, have far fewer empty stations than this, but that is how you play Metro X. So let's start off with the components. These cards are of good quality, they shuffle nicely, and with the very blocked colour, even at a glance, it's easy to know if you're doing a skip, a transfer, a normal, or sort of one of the free spaces. That works really well. And then any roll and write or flip and write that comes with a sort of wipeable board and pen, I think it takes that sort of premium quality to the next level. And the fact you can flip the board over and have another map to do straight out of the box, that's a great use of the components, and it's quite decent cardboard as well, so you know it's going to survive for quite a few plays. Now the game itself, it's a very fast flip and write. It says 20 minutes on the box, and to be honest, that is pretty consistent. Yes, sometimes the game will maybe go on a little bit longer if someone around the table's sort of just thinking out their turns a little bit more than others. It can also be a little bit under that, but it's a fairly fast game. These cards are obviously the entirety of the puzzle that you're sort of trying to do, and when you're filling in these numbers from skips or just the standard ones, you do have to sort of work out where you're going to really try and emphasize and put your effort into. For instance, if I'm going down on one of the routes, it's almost certainly going to be blocking off or at least making another one of them harder. There's some that sort of work together in parts, but then they will break off, just like sort of underground routes on a normal underground map. And I really like that, the way that you're constantly going, okay, if I go here, it's really good for, say, the green route, but I'm going to be spoiling the yellow route a little bit, and I'm going to have to maybe use the skips to try and get round that problem later on. You are creating your own problems in this game as you go. Now, the transfer and the free make this sort of step up a little bit more. It's not just about filling things in. There's chance for a lot of points via transfers. If it wasn't for this card, or the two of them I think that are in the deck, it wouldn't quite feel like there's enough there. With the transfer, you really do go, okay, if I can just leave this area open, I could write down a lot of points from that single transfer coming out. And then you're also, again, coming back to that, maybe screwing yourself over, you're waiting for that transfer to come out. And the way the deck's shuffled, maybe it doesn't, and you're holding on to a route that you could easily put in some just cross off from the numbers, and it's leading to that choice almost coming back to haunt you or getting you a lot of points that I like. And the other one, the free, I wish this card would come up more often. The fact it doesn't means you can never really hope for it, but when it does come up, this single card in the deck, when it does come up, it feels really good because you can often fill in that one blank sort of space that you are really having trouble with. Maybe it just allows you to finish one of the routes and gain those points. Even if you're not first, you're still going to be scoring a lot of points from actually doing the whole of a certain route. Kind of stopping you pushing your luck is the penalties that you're going to take at the end of the game. And with sort of this card, the penalty table card, just sat next to you on the table, it's a constant reminder, I need to fill as many of these stations as I can. So you're pushing your luck here and trying to get that line to the end, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to be losing a lot of points if I don't do this. And that sometimes drives decisions and sometimes doesn't. Sometimes it's like, I can't risk losing that many points. And other times it's, well, if I finish the line, it will be advantageous for me to do so. Like, you can get up to 7 points if you finish one of these lines first, and you're taking that opportunity away from the other players. So there's that nice competitive part where you're trying to rush and then maybe screw yourself over, and then maybe also be making you definitely have penalties at the end. And all of these sort of very simple choices from the flip of the cards come back to what's on the board. For brand new players, it does in the rulebook recommend using one of the sides, but I've found actually if the sort of player is going to be alright playing this game, which is a very simple flip and right, realistically it doesn't matter which side you are using. There is perhaps a bit more of a wiggled congestion area on the metro city side rather than tube town, but it's not that much different in terms of how the game plays and you seeing how those routes wiggle across the board. It does, however, mean you do have that sort of new map, so the game can sort of play a little bit longer, staying that bit of sort of a fresh new game. But then the puzzle coming out each time is going to be different because of the way you're flipping from the deck. And it's one that you can play back to back because you can flip the board over and play again rather than just redo the same map. And then you can put it away and you can bring it back out. It's a nice simple teach. It's not necessarily going to stay on the table forever. You know, you're not going to be playing it for the whole evening, but you can easily, because of the two sides, play a couple of games of Metro X back to back and get a good enjoyment, and it means that everyone around the table has more chance to win, which is always good fun. So who is the target audience for this game? It's very much for a filler game, for families, that style of thing. You can play a couple of games back to back thanks to the double-sided map. You can obviously always do the same map twice, but having that option to flip over, keep the game a little bit fresher, and just play two kind of different experiences, that's a really nice touch. And then you've got the puzzle aspect of it coming out differently from the deck each time, and that's a really nice sort of way that you can put it back on the shelf, bring it back out, and so simple you can be playing again in a minute or two by just flicking through the rulebook. Overall, I will give this a 6.5 out of 10. I think it could be, for many people, it could go higher than that, and it has maybe slipped over time for me from my sort of original ranking, but that's where it sits for me. It's one that I can recommend. If someone wanted to play this, I would definitely play it. It's just there's other roll and writes and stuff out there that I would get to the table before it. Anyway, that is Metro X, the rail and write game from Gamewright. Let us know in the comment section below if you've played the game, what did you think of it, and until next time, check out other news and reviews on the Dice Tower.